Welcome to the Late Night Race Review. It's hugs for Uncle Helmut as the blonde baby boy fails again. British media to call for a public holiday as Sir Lewis gets pole. Ooh. I knight thee, Sir Lewis. McLaren are fast, but is there jitters in their drivers? And most importantly, we are back with a new lineup for 2025. It's the Chinese Grand Prix. Don't forget to support the podcast by hitting those like, follow and subscribe buttons.
Welcome on into the Late Night Race Review, and just like the 2025 grid, there's also some brand new faces, or should I say voices, on this season of the Late Night Race Review. My name is Aodhan Scott, and joined with me today is my brother, Damian Scott, all the way over from the US of America. How you doing, Damian?
Hey, how's it going? Good to join this gang for the season. Looking forward to it.
Unfortunately, Isidro couldn't join us today, but hopefully he should be back for Japan in Suzuka. Obviously, this weekend, being a Ferrari fan like myself, it was, typical business as usual in the office when it comes to Ferrari. Disappointment. Hope. It started off with hope, and then it ended up in bitter disappointment. But yeah, so as I said, look, just like the 2025 grid, there's brand new faces. And of course, coming out of 2024, which was an incredible season, the cars were getting even more closer. We had that awesome, three-way battle there with McLaren and Ferrari and Red Bull. And then, of course, we got all the announcements for all the new rookies that have now joined us for the 2025 lineup. But before we jump into Australia real quick, what do you think of the rookies this season? Like, there's roughly 5 or 6 rookies that we have across each of the teams. Definitely some promising ones, and there's ones that probably still need to get a grip with their car.
Yeah, it was a really interesting break over winter. Some teams got their driver business done early, and we kind of knew who was coming in, and then others were leaving it a bit later. But I think we're starting to see maybe who's done the better business in terms of the rookies. It's always a bit of a gamble, unless you can kind of see them coming in for some replacement races. Like we got to see Berman a few times over the last couple of seasons, and he looked pretty good the couple of races he came in. Same with Lawson. He got maybe half a season last year, and the odd appearance here and there before that. So it was. I think last year we had no changes whatsoever. I think it was one of the first years in a long time where it was the same driver panel going into the season. So we had Antonelli coming in at Mercedes, replacing Lewis Hamilton. So that's. It wasn't a direct replacement. I think George Russell was stepping up, obviously, to be the kind of number one of the team lead there. But Antonelli coming in, he's pretty young. Like he only got his actual car driving license, I think, just during the summer. So he's just a kid, and that was a huge gamble by Toto to kind of bring him in when there was other more experienced drivers probably available who could have slotted in right away.
Yeah.
So that was a big one for me anyway. And I don't know, so far, maybe it might be the best call of the lot.
Yeah,
it's hard to tell. But yeah, it's going to take a while for some of these guys to kind of start to bed in and get used to the week in, week out of a full season. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting. But
yeah, of course. Go on.
Yeah, I think Berman as well. That was kind of less of a gamble for Haas because we've seen a little bit of him before, so I think he's going to be one to watch out for. The rest, I don't know so much about them at this level. I don't think we've really seen them apart from Lawson. But yeah, so far so good. I think for the rookies, obviously Lawson is getting to grips with that beast of a car.
It definitely is a beast for sure. You can even just even touching back there on Kimi Antonelli. I noticed there in it could have been maybe qualifying or maybe it was the sprint race. I heard Bono came on the team radio to Kimi And he said something to him. I can't remember exactly what the wording was, but he said to him, he was like, "Okay, good lap, Lewis. Oh, sorry, good lap, Kimmy." So you can see there already at Mercedes, like like I even heard Toto mentioning that when they seen the lineup in terms of like people who had qualified, like at one stage he thought he saw 3 Mercedes drivers because he still regards Lewis as a Mercedes driver, but obviously now he's a Ferrari. And obviously for Kimi Antonelli, that's definitely a huge seat to fill, like big shoes there to fill there. And then of course Russell stepping up there to be that number one sort of influence and kind of lead the way for Kimi Antonelli. But I mean, even over the last couple of weekends, Kimi Antonelli has just absolutely hit the ground running, when it comes to qualifying, when it comes to his performance. And like obviously we kind of mentioned there that obviously we're going to be talking about Australia. I mean, for all the rookies last weekend, Australia was, I didn't think that any one of them expected that was going to be their first kind of race that they were going to be driving in. But I think that's probably a good point to mention. Damien, can you summarize the Australian Grand Prix in one word for me? Obviously we'll talk about it, but summarize it in one word.
Wet.
And if you're a Father Ted fan, there's 4 words. Looks like rain, Ted. That was basically Australia.
Exactly, yeah. But I think touching back to Antonelli and Russell, going into the season, it was kind of hard to know how it would work out for those guys. But honestly, I think Mercedes have probably one of the best pairings of drivers coming into this season. I think that combo is just going to work really well. Obviously, Piastri and Norris are, they've had a couple of seasons together, and they look like the number one team to beat. But I think Mercedes could be the dark horse. Lawson is having his issues. It's going to be a one-man show for Red Bull, I think, with Max there, unless things start to change. But I think Mercedes might have just pulled off a bit of a coup here in terms of recruitment, looking good so far, and like they're doing quite well and gathering points. So if that continues, that's another thing. But they look like they've got a handle of that car now. Obviously, in the last season of the current regulations, they finally get to grips with it. And per Hamilton has been struggling with that car sometimes in the past number of years. But yeah, I think with Lewis obviously leaving, it's going to be hard for the Mercedes team to adapt, but they've done a good job of it, I think. And he was there 12 years, I think it was, or 13 seasons. So if you've worked with somebody that long in a normal workplace, it's going to be a big change for everybody. So it's I think it's looking good for them. Let's hope it continues.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you just even mentioned in there that they have a handle on that car. I mean, it makes such a huge difference from what Mercedes started off with in 2024 when it came to trying to get to grips with their car. Like all season long, there was always reports coming from Lewis, maybe the odd time from George as well, that, the car is just the balance was off, or there was no traction, or there was no, there was always complaints somewhere along the line from Lewis when it came to that car. So it's good to see, Mercedes in a position this season getting off to a really good start, because even in this current set of regulations with Mercedes, like at the very beginning in 2022, they had an awful start. They not even awful start. They had almost about halfway to, what was it, up to about Baku, where they only started to really get a handle on even like the porpoising that all the cars were having issues with. And I mean, Mercedes just seemed to have had constant issues with this current set of regulations, but so it's good to finally see that they're getting off to a good start with this season. It's a pity that it's the last season of the regulations. It would have been nice to see more of a battle from Mercedes over the last couple of years. Like, I know obviously they had a good season last year and they did somewhat good season the year before, but not the same sort of Mercedes that we were used to right up until when, obviously we won't talk about the war, but the 2021 season, so it's definitely good. But obviously, look, that leads us into Australia. Definitely Kimi Antonelli had a really good race there in the wet. Mercedes definitely, and then of course, Lando Norris taking that victory finally in a wet race where he didn't bottle it at the very beginning. Like he did manage that quite well, all the way through. But obviously, one rookie that definitely had a bit of a disappointing start to his season was Isaac Hajar. That was a very disappointing one in Australia for him. But coming into this weekend, though, obviously China was a different story. Like, he was able to kind of turn that around, but it was definitely a disappointing one for him to start off with. But yeah, no, of course, look, all the rookies, they got their introduction to Formula One with the most difficult condition they could possibly imagine. They all tried their best, and of course, all the veterans that are there as well, they had issues as well. Of course, Sainz had his big crash as well during the Australian race. But no, I think it was just finally good to have F1 back in our screens, with Australia, and then finally having Australia back as the first race of the season. Like that's
definitely. Australia is a great circuit, and that's one I've always loved. And yeah, traditionally it was the opener. I can't remember the last season it was the opener, maybe a while ago, but it's a great circuit there at Albert Park, and the wet conditions really just kind of added that little bit of spiciness and a great race that we're all kind of longing for over the winter break. I had watched the Drive to Survive new series there in the kind of week beforehand, and that had kind of given me a little taster again of the previous season, and just getting ready for it. Some people love it, some people hate it, but it's always a nice little indicator that the season is just around the corner. And there was a lot in that as well about the driver recruitment kind of topics. Australia was good, and again, I think harping back to Mercedes, not to get stuck on them, but
are you a fan of Mercedes, Damian?
The thing that you were saying there about all the issues they kind of had during the commentary, like they barely talked about them. They were just going about their business. It was difficult conditions, and the two of them just really handled it so well. I can't even remember seeing the cars in many of the shots, to be honest. You just kind of knew they were there or thereabouts, and you could obviously see the tracker board on the side of the screen. But third and a fourth in the first race, that's pretty good going. You can't really. Well, you can't ask for more than that, but
well, of course, there's taking P1. That's another ask.
So I think they'd be pretty happy, But it was a great race, and seeing the wet conditions, there's always going to be the team with the best strategy, or making the call at the right time is the one that's going to get the big advantage. So do we stay out a little bit longer? Do we start to risk going on to slicks? There was a couple of drivers were thinking about it, and then decided not to. So and with that, I think Lando and McLaren obviously had a good day there. They did it perfectly, and the king of the rain, Max Verstappen, you can never write him off. So it was a great race, and of course my team Williams, always love to see them do well. We'd Mr. Albon in there in fifth, so it was a great start. And obviously Carlos didn't have the start that he had dreamed of with his new team, but I thought he did pretty well. Like, that's another great pairing.
Definitely.
Mr. James Wells pulling off that signing is, that's an incredible signing for a team like Williams, trying to get them back to where they are. Hopefully we see more from those two over the next number of races to try and build some points. But this is one of the most competitive starts to a season I think we've seen. There's going to be a lot of teams vying for those points. So it was great to see Australia back at the start, and finally great to be back watching F1 again.
Definitely. No, it was good to have that. Like, I even remember from, when I was young, I remember watching Formula One. When I remember it was on the TV, it was always Australia that was the number one race. And I know, like, obviously it got swapped up out there. What was it, back in 2014 or 15? It then went to Bahrain or something like that. So, it's good to have us back on the first race of the calendar. But obviously, look, Australia has come and gone. We know the result from Australia. It was a very, very interesting one. And then, of course, Max Verstappen in the Verstappen Formula One team. You shouldn't even call it Red Bull Oracle Racing for this season. It's just the Verstappen F1 team, because Liam Lawson is just kind of replacing that good old Checo Perez performance from last season. At this stage.
It's kind of a poison chalice, that second seat at Red Bull.
Yeah.
I think probably the last driver that was competitive in that seat was probably Ricardo back when he was in Red Bull. Like there's drivers that have come and gone and rotated through that seat. Like Gasly was there, Albon was there, obviously Checo, now Lawson. It's a tough gig, because that car is really set up for Max, and the way he likes to drive, kind of on the edge. And if you don't suit that style, then that Red Bull car it's a tough one to kind of tame and get used to. So I think Lawson's going to need time. He's had 2 races now, trying to get used to it. He's had really good tests in the car. So has Yuki. He did tests in it as well. Last season, to really see who was going to get that seat. Doing tests is different to the full Formula One weekend. So it's going to be, there's going to be a learning curve for sure for Lawson. Like, he's a really good, aggressive driver. He's obviously got the kind of raw talent there.
Yeah.
If they can, just give him a bit of time and a bit of support, I think it could work out well for them. But obviously, it's a tough start for him.
I'll throw a spanner in the works there. I seen a statistic that was released. We all remember the infamous Nikita Mazepin back in the day for Haas. Apparently, there was a statistic that went out that the average qualifying position for Liam Lawson over the last couple of races, and I know, like, it's early days, it's still only 2 races in, but the average qualifying position so far for Liam Lawson is 19.6. And for Nikita Mazepin, it was 18.7, I think it was. That was the average. So, there's a big difference there, obviously, between the cars. But just kind of touching there on just real quick. And of course, look, we'll run straight into China, and we'll unpack that. But you did mention there about, obviously, the Red Bull car is obviously set up, for Max Verstappen, but like the way I kind of look at it, like, yes, I know Max is a driver who likes a really pointy end in his car. He likes that a little bit sort of, over the knife's edge in terms of aggressiveness when it comes to rotation on the car. And, it's obviously it's a wild stallion, that Red Bull car. But, you look at the performance of Checo Perez. Obviously, last season, it was just, unbelievable when it came to the performance. He just had a terrible season. Obviously, he made a lot of mistakes. There was a few things that were kind of out of his control as well when it came to some of the crashes, like, when it came to Monaco, and, Baku is kind of debatable between Carlos Sainz as well. But the point I'm trying to make here, though, is, when Perez performed, he performed well. He did really put on a performance when the car was obviously working for him. Like, I mean, you look at 2023 when it came to the dominance of Red Bull then, and then you kind of look at it now, like, yes, obviously the cars have changed over each season. You can't really say that, like, each season is going to be the exact same. Like, that's why we have, all these certain stages of the season where cars have upgrade packages and they develop and all this kind of stuff. But, you kind of look at, like, if Perez can do something like that in a car that is supposedly set up around Max Verstappen, like Liam Lawson coming in here, like if you haven't seen Drive to Survive, I thoroughly recommend that you do check it out. But from what it was sort of depicted from Drive to Survive, was that Liam Lawson was kind of, tooting his own trumpet, saying, "Oh, I'm better than Checo." But do you really think that maybe Liam Lawson has kind of tried to learn to run before he's learned to walk? Like, should he have given himself like an actual full season with Racing Bulls first to really get a grips on being F1 for a full season, and then possibly go to Red Bull Racing? Because
there's a lot to unpack there. There's so many different layers to it. But starting off with Checo, you just don't become a bad racer overnight. But I think every racer comes to that point where they kind of lose their edge a little bit. True. Kind of like golf, it's kind of more of a mental game than anything else. Like he obviously has the talent. You know, he's shown that he can drive and win races. He's a good racer, but when he was getting behind, you're obviously then pushing and doing things that are, you know, you shouldn't be doing to try and get back into races. You're kind of scrambling, and that's where the errors or the unfortunate issues start to kind of happen. You know, kind of like you're talking Baku, the Carlos Sainz and the crash that he had with him. Again, he was kind of scrambling to get into that race, to get back into it, and to, you know, kind of prove his worth. The season was starting to tick down, and he obviously knew his head was on the chopping block. So that's the pressure that you have to deal with at that level. And when you have the likes of the Red Bull situation, where there is a sister team and there's young drivers coming through that academy, they're nipping at your toes pretty much all season. So, you know, Lawson, he's young. I wouldn't say he's arrogant, but he backs himself. He has confidence. He's a young man with a lot of confidence. So obviously he's going to say those things. He thinks he can do it. He's been, you know, and even last season when he was in that Racing Bulls car or whatever they called it at the time, I can never remember their acronyms, VCarb and Toro Rosso and AlphaTauri.
Yeah, Visa Cash
he had some great little battles with Sainz, actually. And he got the better of him in a lot of those battles, you know. So he kind of proved it on the track, and I think that's what probably came into Red Bull's mind, that, you know, he kind of got the better of Checo in some of those encounters, and his obvious talent. So it's obviously it's a different game when you get in there and you're sitting in the seat yourself. So he has to prove it. There's only one way to do that, right? So
no, that's very true. No, it's very, 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 very true. And I mean, like, you don't get anywhere in Formula One by being polite. Like, you don't wave drivers by and say, oh, there's a driver coming beside me, I'll let you go by first. No, you have to be aggressive. You have to be this ruthless sort of, you know, I don't care, I'm going for it, I'm gunning for P1. Like, that's what makes
it's
champions.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's 20 seats, soon to be 22.
Yeah, exactly. You know, 22, and then potentially as well 24. Oh no, sorry, not 24. Sorry, 22. Because we have Sauber, who are changing to Audi, and then of course we've got Cadillac coming in, and who knows, potentially Cadillac could be an opening for a Perez return. You know, we have that sort of Mexico American connection there. That could be a potential thing.
Yeah. He obviously brings a lot of advertising and a lot of clout, and you know that's kind of one of the reasons he was at Red Bull as well. He's a massive following. Mexico is a huge market, and obviously it's a great race as well. So for a US team, though, I think they will be based in the UK mainly. I think that's where their factory will be. But for all intents and purposes, it's a US team. To have that kind of American audience there in terms of the US and Mexico, having Perez in there makes a lot of sense. You know, maybe might see the return of Logan Sargent. Who knows? No,
Damien, we don't. we don't want to see the return of Logan Sargent. I don't think anyone wants to see the return of Logan Sargent, unless like maybe you have like an F1 fantasy sort of thing that we like to do here on the show, and you can kind of just, you know, play that sort of easy sort of number game where you can go, who's going to finish outside the top 10? I'm going to go for another Logan Sargent this week.
It's kind of, he was in the that bracket, the good bet, right? You know, like Latifi and those kind of guys.
he was easy money. It was a guarantee. But anyway, look, we'll cross that Checo Perez bridge when eventually it comes. But forgetting about that, we are on to China, Damien. China was this weekend. It was a action-packed weekend full of a sprint race, qualifying race, people getting disqualified, people giving out, and there was crashes. There was loads and loads of stuff to unpack, and especially from the race today, which was some people definitely found it exciting. I found it a very exciting race. Some people kind of maybe went back to bed after a little while and found it a little bit boring. But I think this episode, especially, you know, for China, there was a lot to unpack from that. So what we'll do is we'll start off with the sprint first of all. We'll run into sprint quali, because that was there on, what was it, Saturday or Friday or Saturday, the sprint qualifying, and then we had the sprint on the Saturday morning. Run through, Damien. Let me know what you thought of the sprint quali and the sprint race. What was what do we take out of that?
But these were all at weird times for me, because I'm in the US West Coast and it was in China, so some of the stuff I saw live and others was on replay after getting up early as well. But yeah, the qualifying for the sprint race was, yeah, it was good, and I think then obviously it showed what the theme of the weekend was going to be, which was tire degradation and
Yep.
having to look after your tires. That was going to be obviously key. And yeah, harping back to our friend Liam Lawson that we're talking about, he didn't have a great showing in the qualifying. I think he had, the one hot lap that he made a a pig's ear of it. Let's call it that.
Definitely, for sure.
Yeah, understeer. He got his tires too hot. He didn't hit the nail on the head. And again, I don't know if that's an experience, but he has a pretty experienced team behind him. So I don't know what happened there with him, but they didn't time it right. They overcooked it, and yeah, he screwed that up pretty well. So yeah, I think he started at the back of the grid, if I'm not mistaken on that anyway. But yeah, and obviously then Ferrari is the big hot news from that.
For
sprint,
sure, yeah.
Sprint session and sprint qualifying. Lewis Hamilton, having the lap of his life. He pulled out an absolute rocket of a lap in that new Ferrari. And we haven't really talked about Ferrari much so far, but obviously Australia didn't go to plan for them as they would have hoped. But yeah, after watching the sprint qualifying, you're like, wow, are Ferrari back in this? Are they a contender this season? And Lewis Hamilton is we all know he's a great driver, but coming into a new car, it's obviously set up different to how he's been used to driving for Mercedes for a number of years. So there could have well been, a ramping up period for him. But he's a multi-time champion. He started to prove it. So yeah, that was fantastic to see that great lap that he did. And of course, then obviously Max didn't want to be he didn't want to be outshone. He literally had one lap, and he just went for it at the end in the third round of qualifying in the sprint, and he just absolutely nailed it and got in there with second place. Like it was really, really close to Hamilton, who was obviously a fantastic. There was 1/1,000,000th of a second in it or something like that. It was virtually identical, and
very close.
The sign of a true champion, just being able to do it when it was needed. He's never under pressure, just went out and did it. And we got in there for P2 for the grid for the sprint. So yeah, it was good qualifying session.
I'd say a lot of Lewis Hamilton fans probably woke up for the sprint race, and we're probably looking at the all the text on screen seeing Hamilton and Verstappen battling out, and they're probably there saying to themselves that famous meme, what year is this?
Yeah.
They're probably thinking to themselves, wow, are we back in 2021? What's going on? But obviously different car, different circumstances. One thing that our listeners are probably going to be familiar with after a couple of episodes is, first of all, I'm a huge Ferrari fan, so there'll be no ill talk of Ferrari when I'm on this show. But unfortunately,
you're nailing your colors to the mast, are you?
Yeah, exactly. I'm nailing my colors to the mast. Well, I know obviously for our viewers, you can't obviously see our video or what's in the background, but you can even see I've got a little Ferrari F1 model car in the background here. So I'm Ferrari, live and die as I breathe and all that stuff. I am a huge Ferrari fan all the way back to the old Schumacher days. That's what got me into Ferrari. But the thing about it is, I'm going to have to absolutely not berate them for this episode, but there is a lot of disappointment. As a Ferrari fan, I went into this weekend after the sprint race, with that win from Lewis Hamilton. I was like, brilliant, great, brilliant turnaround. We have some hope this season. And then obviously, look, we'll go and we'll talk about it in a little bit, obviously, when it comes to the race and what happened there. But it just kind of feels like you start off good, and then it's just typical business as usual. Ferrari, hope, then disappointment, hope, and then back to disappointment. you know? So,
well, I think everybody's a Ferrari fan, right? They're that team that everybody has a soft spot for. Me too. Obviously, that Michael Schumacher era with Eddie Irvine and Rubens and that whole Schumacher was unbelievable. So
of course,
I think everybody loves Ferrari. There might be some
Mm.
people that don't, but they do secretly. But
Yeah, of course. Yeah, when nobody's looking, they're there on F124 driving as Charles Leclerc. You
yeah, yeah. But again, like you're saying, you can't see my background, but I've got the McLaren MP4 poster,
Ooh,
the Senna car, and the Frank Williams 14B from the early 90s.
very
One of the best
nice.
cars ever developed. It was so
Yeah,
technologically advanced for the time. It was incredible. So, yeah, they've always kind of been my two teams that I'll
yeah,
root for. Obviously, Williams in recent times haven't been where they've always been. So they're
yeah, of
always
course.
the one I'll shout for and hope to see do well. And obviously McLaren as well. They're doing quite well at the moment. But
Of
yeah,
course,
it's
yeah.
yeah, Ferrari. Yeah, it was great to see them and right back in here with Lewis. And starting off with at P1. Out of the blocks, he was like straight into that corner in the sprint.
Yeah.
And he did a really good job of kind of closing Max off. He was in P2, but he had the inside line. Max had the inside line, so I think even in the commentary they're saying he's a good run into this corner. He's probably better being in P2 than P1 because you had a better line. But yeah, Lewis was straight across and just he closed that down right away.
Yeah,
Um,
he did a good stint there. Like just even closing that gap up, like that's what I mean. Like a lot of Lewis
yeah,
Hamilton fans were probably waking up to that and going, "Oh my God, what year is this?" It was great to see that action again, especially between two, world champions. Like that's the kind of stuff we want to see. Like that's the excitement, and that's what Formula One
yeah.
is known for. And obviously, look, one team we haven't talked about, and obviously we will talk about them. They will come up a lot now going into the race. But McLaren, that's one team we definitely need to discuss about the sprint race because obviously, look, Piastri, he had a phenomenal sprint race. Like I know, obviously, starting off there in P3, but coming back there and having that battle with Max Verstappen, getting ahead of him, and then of course, like you look at Lando Norris. I mean, a lot of people going into this weekend were kind of hoping that we would sort of see the same Lando Norris from Australia, even though Australia, yes, it was wet conditions and there's always going to be a lot of variables there when it comes to wet conditions, but a lot of people were still hoping for that Lando Norris performance, like, oh, Lando's going to take it again, and we're going to see another McLaren 1-2, which eventually we did in the race. But you could kind of see there that, like, with Lando Norris, like, I sort of feel with him. I'm a big Lando Norris fan. I love Lando. I think he's great. And I mean, I would love to either see Lando or Piastri taking the Drivers' Championship this season or next or whenever possible. But you can even see with Lando Norris sometimes he's kind of like a 50-50 driver at the moment. Like 50% of the time he shows up and he's unbelievable. He delivers. He gets the best out of the car and he gets the points. But then when it comes to certain situations, he just bottles it and he just drops down, like,
Yeah, well, like he lost probably two or three places, I think, in those first sequence of corners. So he
yeah,
was, I think by the end of the first or second lap, he was about three places down. He kind of locked up. He went wide,
yeah,
got himself into a bit of trouble out on the grass, I think, and yeah, he just needed a bit of a cooler head, I think, in those
yeah,
opening couple of laps, and
yeah,
yeah, even after it got to I think about the seventh or eighth lap, something like that. He was starting to complain about the front left tire graining,
yeah.
degradation. He couldn't get the pace out of the car. So yeah, he just kind of seemed a little bit unsettled or something like that, like he was pushing too hard. And obviously, like Piastri was like a last season. He was kind of showing that he's probably the equal to Lando. So he's got
Definitely.
that in the back of his mind. Plus, he had the pressure of trying to win the championship as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, McLaren is a difficult balancing act for the management there this season in particular because they've two drivers that are really
Yeah.
capable of winning the championship. So I
Yeah.
think it's going to be a mental battle, and I think probably Piastri is a little bit stronger mentally than Lando. So sometimes you can see those little mistakes from him, or but yeah, that's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on. And in this sprint section, yeah, it was really all about the tires.
Yeah.
Yeah, around lap 10 or something like that. All of them were starting to complain and get on the radios, like, I've lost lost all grip and this kind of thing. So
Yeah. And That's the thing. Like, I think going into this year of China, like obviously this is the first year that it's been resurfaced. So,
Yeah.
like most of the tracks, like last season, I know Coda was resurfaced. There was another track that was resurfaced as well. I can't remember exactly which one it was. Monza, that was resurfaced as well. So like you
Yeah.
have all these tracks that are getting resurfaced. So drivers, even though they know the layout, they know it like the back of their hand. Everyone was struggling for the tire graining going into this weekend. Like it was you could just even see the lap times dropping off exactly around lap 10 or 11, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah. It
was a
was
bit.
that window. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
window is when they started to fall off.
Mm.
But then obviously, like when it came to strategies in a sprint race, the only strategy is finish the race on the tire that you're on. There's no need to pit. But unfortunately, one did, and that was Carlos Sainz. We thought for a second when it came to the commentary, I think it was Martin Brundle and maybe it was even Ted Kravitz even said, he was like, oh yeah, they're definitely going to retire the car for Carlos Sainz. But he came in and he changed his tires straight over again. Was it back over to mediums, and there he goes. He was out again.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think Carlos was like 13th. He was like P13, I think, starting the sprint. So
hmm,
yeah, he wasn't really, battling for points. Yeah, and I think it was around lap 12 or 13, something like that. They just went, right, get him in, get new tires. Obviously, that's him out of the race from a competitive standpoint. But I think Williams definitely gained a lot of good data from that decision. They knew they weren't going to get any points from it. So yeah, come in, get tires, and see how the car performs then over the rest of the race. And I think, within a lap or two, he was gaining 2 seconds per lap, or he was 2 seconds per lap faster than the top three at the time. So,
yeah,
they weren't going to win anything, they weren't going to gain anything, but yeah, let's get some data and let's get some good information for the race and the qualifying coming up, because yeah, tire degradation obviously was the big one for this weekend. So I think
yeah.
that was pretty smart from Williams. At the end of the day, it was a good piece of information, but yeah, it's yeah, they weren't really going to gain much from it. So yeah, good on
Yeah.
them. I'll give them a green check mark for that one.
Yeah, look, I think regardless, whenever it's your team, you're going to defend whatever decision that they make. But for me,
Yeah.
it's a different story when it comes to Ferrari. I can't defend that. But look, overall, when it comes to the sprint race, it ended up being Lewis Hamilton taking that P1 victory for Ferrari in that red car. He was delighted to get that. The fans were delighted for that as well. It ended up with Piastri coming in there at P2. At one point, you could kind of see that he was kind of catching up to Hamilton. But then obviously, he was falling off again. Like Hamilton had that lovely plus 6 second gap there at the very end. And then Verstappen finishing in there in P3. So overall, the top three, they all had a difficult race, but it was a great race to see. Like there were some very close battles there. But then obviously we had Russell in P4, Leclerc coming in there in P5. Then we had Tsunoda coming in there in P6. Definitely a great race from Tsunoda. And I mean, the Racing Bulls, like this season for Racing Bulls is it's going to be a promising one. Like I know, and again, look, we'll touch on it when we get into the race now in a few moments. But the Racing Bulls definitely look like a good contender to look out for. I mean, even Max Verstappen, he made a nice little cheeky comment there in the post race there this afternoon saying, yeah, they seem to be up there with me now. And what does that say? So Racing Bulls are one to look out for.
Yeah, it's honestly, I think that's a pretty good pairing as well. And like obviously we don't know too much about Hadjar. We only know but from his time in the formulas below. But
yeah,
in terms of F1, obviously he's a rookie. But so far, obviously Australia, we didn't get to see much of him. But he's a good racer. So I think that could be a good pairing. They seem to be working well together. Watch this space. They could be challenging in the midfield for sure with the likes of Alpine and Williams,
of course,
and Haas as well. So yeah.
And then after that, we had Antonelli coming in there in P7. And then finally, to wrap up the points for the sprint race, because only the top 8 claim points from the sprint race, we had Lando Norris finishing there in P8. So definitely a tough race for him. Not the race that he was hoping for. But then, of course, look, you know, the best news out of all of that, and this is one recurring theme that a lot of people are going to know when it comes to me. I don't like Liam Lawson. I'm not a fan. If we ever get to, you know, maybe in an alternate universe, we get to interview Liam Lawson, he's probably going to give me absolute shit for this, but I don't like Liam Lawson. But good news for me, Liam Lawson, yes, he qualified in P20. Lol. But then he finished up in P14. So there you go. Liam Lawson, take a bow.
But yeah, kudos to Hamilton and Ferrari for that. You know, they did a great strategy for the race. He looked after the tires well. You know, he got out in front. He was comfortable from the beginning, and he just went for it. So, you know, that was a great way to kind of start off his Ferrari career after, you know, not so much of a result that they wanted in Australia. But I think a funny little bit at the end of the sprint was I think it was a Doohan and the two Cybers, Bortoleto and Hulkenberg. They all had a little bit of a clash. They were spinning around, having a dance with each other, and Carlos Sainz just yoinked around the outside. I was like, thank you very much for 3 places, you know.
One driver we haven't spoke about at all so far this episode, Jack Doohan, you know, coming in there into Alpine, replacing Ocon. He had definitely a difficult sprint race, and then unfortunately, of course, you know, we seen from the race as well, and we'll get into that again momentarily. But after the sprint race, he had 3 penalty points added to his license. Because of that incident. He had 3 penalty points apparently added to his license because of that crash with Bortoleto, and of course that held up the likes of Hulkenberg as well.
He kind of took 2 out, right?
He took 2 out. You know, that's kind of the thing, you know, like in F1 24, you can get away with doing that if you turn the rules off. But unfortunately, this is real life. And when you do that in an actual race, the FIA don't like that. So
exactly. Yeah.
Jack Doohan, take a bow. You know.
I like the cut of his jib, Doohan. He's
the cut of his jib.
I can't remember who it was. Was it your man Helmut Marko was giving him crap there during the week? He made some comment about him. I think it was him.
No, that was Bortoleto. He was.
I think Marko, your man Helmut Marko, as well, said something about him, and I was like, that's a bit out of turn. Talking about another team's racing driver about that. It was something about he doesn't look like a racer, or
he
can't remember exactly what it was, but I was like, keep your opinion to yourself, Helmut, you know?
Exactly. He called Bortoleto a B-grade driver. And I mean, you got to look at his, you know, second seat driver currently. I mean, he's not even a B-grade driver. I think he's just at this stage after China, he might just end up being an Uber driver at this stage.
Yeah. Did he say that about Bortoleto, was it?
That was about Bortoleto. He was.
Okay, sorry. I thought it was about Doohan. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Either way, I was like, keep your opinion to yourself.
And that's the thing. And you're probably going to notice another recurring theme. Marco Helmut, or well, that's actually what I was going to call him. Helmut Marko for me is not Helmut Marko. He is Marco Helmet, because he is a helmet with some of the jib, as you like to say, that he likes to come out with when it comes to particular drivers. And I think you're totally right. Leave your opinion to yourself and focus on your own issues inside your own team. And
a little bit of a deflection there, I think. Yeah.
And we won't get into the whole Red Bull drama. That's a whole can of worms that I think everyone is kind of at this stage used to. But yeah, definitely a great sprint race. But that obviously brings us into the qualifying for the main Grand Prix and the Grand Prix itself. So this morning I woke up, I was super excited for the race, and it delivered. You know, it was definitely a good one, because finally we got to see all 20 drivers in a dry race, great conditions, and we got to see everyone for what they were across a long stint, you know, when it comes to like a race stint. But yeah, Damian, take me through it. What did you think of qualifying, and what did you think of the main race?
Well, I didn't catch qualifying. I watched it back on a replay, so I didn't see it live, but Oscar just seemed to be, he was on fire. He just looked like he had it I wouldn't say the whole way through, but he always looked pretty pretty strong, and of course, yeah, George Russell and Mercedes getting the P2, getting the front row.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, like I think, as I said earlier on, Mercedes are the dark horse this season. That was a great run by them, and of course, then Lando Norris P3, so you had three Mercedes cars in the top three there.
Yeah.
Locking out Max into fourth place. So, yeah, and of course the two Ferraris were fifth and sixth in the qualifying. So from the sprint to the qualifying, they dropped off quite a bit. Hard to know what the conditions were like, or how much they changed between the two sessions, But yeah, it was a good qualifying. Yeah, unfortunately, my guy Carlos Sainz didn't do too well in his Williams. He was starting a little bit back
Yeah.
on the grid. I think it's 15th or something. He qualified in, but yeah, Alex Albon, he got in the top 10, that was a good showing from him. And of course, then yeah, the two Racing Bulls, or the AlphaTauris, whatever you want to call them, Hadjar and Tsunoda also inside the top 10 as well. So. Yeah, there's nice little pairs starting to show up here in these new drivers and coming into these kind of established teams. Yuki's been there quite a while, and obviously George has been there quite a while as well. So the younger guys coming in are kind of ramping up pretty quickly in those two teams. So
definitely, yeah. And I know qualifying was really exciting, like obviously, as you said there, Piastri, he took it by storm, and he said he even had the lap of his life there. Or no, it was not the lap of his life, it was the hairpin of his life that he had in qualifying that got him that extra couple of hundredths of a second there over Russell and Norris to claim that P1 there. But then obviously as well, yes, there's a lot of great pairings there on the grid, a lot of great qualifying positions there, especially Antonelli, Hadjar, up there in the grid and stuff like that. And it's great to see that, especially from the rookies, not all down at the very bottom. But one rookie in particular who did take the biscuit again, Liam Lawson, take a bow. P20, well, technically P19, because Hulkenberg had to start from the pits because he had that change. Was it the suspension he had the change, or was it it was something? Was it the
can't remember what it was, but he changed it while in park permit, so he had to start from the pit lane.
and that's it. But I'm going to call anyway. Liam Lawson, he started at the back. And yeah, look, when it came to the strategies, I think obviously, like we were kind of talking yesterday about this ourselves. Like we kind of predicted that, most teams were going to start off just straight away on the hard tires and, just go the long stint and, maybe make it a one stop. Most teams did end up making it a one stop. But as you've seen from the race, and for many people who, or maybe you might have missed the race, a lot of teams started off on medium. And then they made it over to the hard, and it looked like the one stopper was the way to go for a lot of teams because, as we've seen, and we'll touch on each of the teams as we go through. But as we've seen, like the Racing Bulls, they got caught out in a big way with that two stopper. They thought everyone was going to be on a two stopper, but then unfortunately, when they decided to go down the two stop route, they absolutely fell down through the grid in terms of position.
Yeah, it's the big decision, right? You go with the one or you go with the two, and on the day you just have to make it and stick by your decision, or obviously if things change during the race, you have the flexibility in your strategy to make the change if you need to. Obviously they felt that they had to do something different. I think everybody was going to do a one stopper. It seemed to be set up for that, and the data from the previous sessions was pointing towards that as well. So yeah, you have to give them some kudos for trying to do something different. Maybe they felt that with the fresher set of tires in their second stint, they could have gained some time back, but it seems like they kind of got caught up in the midfield, and some of the places that they popped back out into coming out of the pit lane just didn't really tie up too well for them. So it didn't work out on the day, but I think to stand out, you really have to try and do something different.
Of course,
sometimes, they'll learn from it. But obviously it didn't work out for them on the day. But fair play to them for giving it a go. But the one stopper was the way to do it. Either starting on the mediums or then coming onto the hards, or the other way around. So yeah, I think most went for the medium starting off, right? So
Of course, yeah. Most of them started off with the mediums. That there was a couple of teams I think started off on hards. I think was it maybe it was Oliver Behrman. Like maybe did he start off on hard, or there was one or two teams that did actually
yeah.
start off on the hard.
Mm.
But obviously, yeah, no Racing Bulls. Could have been a thing that maybe they were trying to do something different, or maybe was it a sideshow Bob moment from The Simpsons? They just they stepped on a rake and just got hit in the face by everyone's pure genius by just going on the one stopper. But obviously,
Maybe they hired some Ferrari guys during the summer. Who knows? They're based in Italy, aren't they? Yeah, they're the old minority team. Yeah,
that's true. Stop rubbing salt in the wounds. You leave Ferrari out of this. No ill will of Ferrari on this show. But of course, but then obviously what was out of Sonoda's control was that broken front wing, and what it looked like was just pretty much the it broke under the load of the car. You could even see there when he was coming into turn one, or not even turn one. He was on the main straight of the
he was on the straight, I think.
He was on the straight even before he came in the turn one, and the front wing just snapped. It just went on him, and that obviously that ended up being what it was. But yeah, that was so
it's hard to know if he got hit a curb too heavily, or maybe somebody touched him that we didn't see off camera or whatever. But for it to break under just regular wind pressure or whatever you want to call it, going down a straight under regular downforce conditions, that's pretty concerning, and it's obviously an engineering defect if that is the case. But there's probably something else that caused that. Either he was a little bit rough, up in a curb or something, or there was some action off screen that we didn't see. I wouldn't put that past Yuki. He sometimes can be a little bit aggressive, but definitely that scuppered his race towards the end. And he was actually doing okay for a while. Like he came in around lap 12. I think he was trying to do the undercut, and it seemed to work out well for him. Anyway, he came out, I think he got ahead of Antonelli. So that first kind of stop seemed to go okay for them, and the strategy was looking good then. But obviously, I don't think they could get to the end of the race with what they were planning. But any chance he had, obviously, he was gone when he had to come in and make that change. So bad day at the office overall, but promising enough signs. Just didn't go their way today.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, if you look at the difference between the sprint race and the actual race itself, like, yes, of course, you learn from your mistakes, and they did have a difficult day in the office. But I think for sure, like, when you look at the sprint and then you look at like how they qualified, like that Racing Bulls car is very, very promising. And, I maybe even like, and I don't want to, make this episode all about Liam Lawson and, that sort of thing. But like, if it's a case of Lawson keeps on performing the way he's going, like there could definitely be a driver swap even before the summer break when it comes to, when it comes to the Racing Bulls and or should I say not Oracle Red Bull Racing, but the Verstappen F1 racing team or Formula 1 team.
It's not I wouldn't put it past them. They've done it before, like that whole thing with Gasly and Albon, and in that era I think it was a mid-season switch, or it was can't remember exactly which race it was, but they're okay with making those decisions if they need to. They're not the hard calls, they're okay with making them. So but again, I think you have to give these drivers time, at least a dozen races or so into a season. If it's not working then obviously do it. There was, what do you call the driver that was at AlphaTauri, the Dutch guy? Didn't he get canned as well?
Nick De Vries, was it?
Nick De Vries, halfway through the season. He's Dutch, is he? I think he is, yeah.
Is he Dutch?
Can't remember, but he got
something anyway.
Ditched. He got ditched after I think it was the Dutch Grand Prix or something.
He did.
So they've done it at the Racing Bulls, the junior team. We've had Ricardo in there as well over the past season or two, and It's on Lawson, so they have a good stable of young drivers, as I say, biting at their heels. So they'll do that if they need to. There's no two ways about it. But I just hope they give Lawson time because I think he is a good driver overall.
No, he's not a good driver, Damon. No,
Yeah,
but
but
like,
as we're talking about wings and stuff like that, Leclerc obviously he had his issue right, I think in turn one,
yes, that
where he
that
lost
that
his
big
front,
incident. Mm.
yeah, his front end plate where he kind of bounced off the curb and into the back of Lewis, and Lewis is like, what the hell? Somebody just hit me.
Yeah, that was just,
Yeah.
I think, purely just a racing incident, as they like to call it.
Yeah. But it didn't seem to hurt Leclerc too much because he's the one that had the pace between the two Ferrari cars, and he kind of took off.
Yeah, just made no
So
sense.
yeah, maybe the wonky wing is the way to go at China in the future. It didn't seem to hurt him
That's it. Yeah.
whatsoever.
All teams now for the 2026 season are going to be redesigning their front wings with one end plate on the side and one
Yeah,
completely gone, or just both end plates gone.
yeah.
you know
But I think Ferrari,
but
like,
yeah.
obviously, then the time to come in and change that wasn't worth it in terms of the overall race because
Yeah.
it's I think when Sonoda came in, it was like a 17-second pit stop to change the whole front and tires. So
Yeah.
2 seconds versus 17, that's a 15-second gap, which would have obviously pushed him further down and pretty much out of the race. So yeah, they just went for it. It wasn't hurting them too much. So yeah, fair play to Ferrari for obviously just sticking with it. Obviously, if there was an issue or some sort of thing hanging off and it was going to be a safety problem, he probably would have got the old flag to come in and get a change. But yeah, it seemed to have blown off, and there was no safety issue, so they just went for it.
Yeah, that's true, and it's quite surprising because like even though like after Leclerc had he was ahead of Hamilton, but what I'm about to say is that you could even see like he had the pace, but
Yeah,
we look at the result after the race that they were found that the car was underweight. Like I know obviously that was one of the talking points that was brought up, that obviously if the car does have any sort of damage done to it, if it's missing a piece of aero or something like that, like when all these cars are examined at the end of the race to make sure that they're meeting the regulations, those sort of things are taken into consideration, and the teams are allowed to replace those particular parts during the examination. But I think obviously the FIA, they know what they're doing. Of course they're the FIA, but obviously during that examination they seen that because obviously the car was underweight, could that maybe just have been the reason why he had more pace? Because let's say you put any other car on the grid in the exact same condition, would it have maybe had the same pace? Would have been faster than Lewis? And I know Lewis had his disqualification as well. Obviously with the floor, what was the exact thing? It was
the skid plate, the plank underneath
that was it.
Like
yeah.
0.4 of a millimeter at the sides and 0.5 of a millimeter underneath. In the center, it was kind of shaved down too much. So obviously they had too much downforce on the car or something, which kind of scraped off more than it should have. But I think with the Leclerc one, obviously they could have replaced the that wing. With those things being so light, it was probably milligrams, but they do take that into consideration. But I think it was something like a kilogram. Underweight, so it's probably more of a fuel situation. They were too close at the end with too little fuel or something like that. So I guess they'll get to the bottom of it. But yeah, that was kind of disappointing that the two Ferraris ended up being chopped off at the end.
Yeah, because
they'd battled well. They'd kind of hung in there. The teamwork was starting to come into place. I think there was at one point, I don't know, it was around lap 20 or so. The Ferrari pit wall was like, guys, swap around because Leclerc has the pace, and Hamilton's like, all right, yeah, I'll do it when Charles is closer. He didn't want to obviously lose any time, and then they did it. I think the next lap or two, they did that swap around. So it was good to see those two starting to gel and a bit more cohesion there in the Ferrari garage. But yeah, it was disappointing that but the rules are the rules, right? So
yes, they're there for a reason.
yeah, they're there for a reason. They got the setup, the downforce setup, maybe wrong on Hamilton's car,
Yeah,
and they paid the price. So yeah,
yeah,
unfortunate that they got nothing out of it. They had two cars, they got nothing out of it. So
that was
it is what
it.
it is, and somebody obviously will get a clip around the ear for for that. That's two major miscalculations, right? Is that the
Yeah.
Ferrari clown show starting up again? I don't know. Who
Maybe
knows?
someone in Maranello is definitely getting a bit of a slap with a pizza in the face at some stage, but
Yeah,
they're definitely they're not going to be happy bunnies over in Italy after today or this weekend.
yeah,
But then, of course, look, we had also Gasly who got hit with that penalty as well. Well, not penalty, but disqualification. His car was
yeah.
underweight. But what was a little bit different, two points I'm going to talk about here today, and I definitely love to hear your thoughts on it. But one thing that I think a lot of who are non Max Verstappen fans were probably happy to see was that there was very little talk about Max Verstappen through the entire race. About 90% of the race had gone through, and there was no mention of Max Verstappen until like maybe the last, I don't know, 7 laps possibly, until
Mm,
he kind of came alive and was trying to hunt down the top of the pack there. But yeah, no talk from him. And then also as well, Alonso out there after, what was it, lap 5? He had that brake failure, and
yeah,
yeah,
very early.
had
Yeah.
to retire the car. So tell me what you think, Damien. Tell me about what did you think of Verstappen's performance on the Verstappen Formula One team, and and Fernando Alonso.
Max just did his thing, right? I think
Yeah,
even over the last couple of years, when he was, in first place in every race, he was ahead by 15 or 20 seconds. You never saw him on camera anyway. It was about the other cars.
yeah.
It was just about Max is going to win it, so let's not even bother, bringing him into the live feed. So not too different there, but the only difference, I suppose, then is now he's running in fourth or fifth and
Yep.
sixth, trying to get up into the podium positions. Given the kind of degradation that the car was experienced, I think a couple of times he talked about he had grip issues and no pace and all this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Fourth is pretty decent from him. Um, he's obviously struggling a little bit with that car. I think there has been some noticeable issues with the Red Bull in the second half of last season, with McLaren coming right back into it.
Yeah.
They've had some issues there. Obviously, the whole Checo thing was a big part of that, but I think Max as well just wasn't at the races, to say. But again, the car kind of let them down on a few occasions. I think there was brake issues and some things like this. So yeah, that car, even with Max in it, seems to be struggling a little bit in recent times. But I think just because Max is so good, he can get it home, in either the podium or the top 5 or 6. So
Yeah.
yeah, he's just a brilliant driver. There's no two ways about it. He's excellent. You throw anything at him and he just deals with it and he gets on with it. It's like a young Ayrton Senna or Michael Schumacher. He's in
Yeah.
that category. He's
No,
he's just he's just so good. Too
yeah.
good, in fact.
Yeah, that's the thing. Love him or hate him, he's like, for this generation, he is definitely, he is the GOAT of this generation. He is the Lewis Hamilton of this generation. He's the Michael Schumacher, the Ayrton Senna. He is that, like, regardless if you hate him or you're a big fan of him, that's exactly who he is, and he will definitely go down as that for sure. But then, of
Yeah.
course, Alonso, the long time rookie veteran, as everyone likes to call him. It was unfortunate for him, going out after lap 5, and obviously Aston Martin wanting to try and bring home some points this weekend. Like they wanted to try and do that, but obviously Alonso just,
Yeah, 2 weeks in a row, like back-to-back retirements. You can't say that too many times about Alonso. He's had a
yeah,
long career. I think he's just kind of floating about the last season or two, just putting in his time.
yeah.
Maybe it's time for the once great Alonso to start to think about hanging up the old gloves and boots. Or
Yeah,
maybe
that's
it's just that team. Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there for Aston Martin, and obviously with the new regulations coming in next year, they're kind of aiming towards that. I think they're getting the Honda engines, right? They're going to work with Honda, I think it is.
That's correct.
So they're going to focus more of their energy on that, I think. And obviously, then they have Lance Stroll in there, who I think he's not a bad driver, but he's not a Formula One level driver, right? Yeah,
he's basically, he's just living up to his name. He was just strolling around the track, and that's what he's done ever since he's come into the sport. He has just strolled around the track because Daddy Stroll has a lot of money, and that's why he's in that position. But
well, but he's had a decent career before that. Obviously, he's backed by his dad, and but he's kind of come through the ranks, and he wouldn't be in that position if it was just his daddy's money, right? He has to be semi-competitive. But again, is he one of the best 20 drivers in the world? Probably not. He shouldn't be there. But but he actually had a good race today. I think he stayed out. He that whole pit window between lap 14 to 18 or whatever it was, I think himself and Albon stayed out, and then it was, I don't know, lap 21, 22, 23, the two of them, Albon and Stroll, eventually came in. So I think Albon was leading the race for a while. But obviously the others were catching him pretty quickly, so they're like, yeah, right, we have to get in and get the old tires changed here. But again, I think Mercedes were the kind of, they had the balance right, I think, this race. I think it was Leclerc was saying, he's like, I'm having really tough time catching Russell at one point near the end. He's like, these Mercedes are great out of the corners, and he said it looked like a dragster or a drag race car or something like that coming out the corners. It just took off. So I think Mercedes really got their strategy right, and they looked after the tires well. So fair play to them. And then McLaren at the end, per Lando, his brake pedal looked like it had gone through the bottom of the car, and he hit no brakes. He was kind of nursing that home, and Russell was hunting him down. I think he was about 9 seconds behind Russell was, and at the end it was like 2 seconds, so he was catching him. If there was a couple more laps, I think per Lando would have been down into third on the grid. So
that was very close near the end. It pretty much ended. Norris ended up plus 9 seconds behind Piastri, and then Russell plus 11. So there was a 2 second gap there at the very end. You can even see Russell coming around the last corner just behind Lando. So he just got in there by the skin of his teeth.
I think 1 or 2 more corners and he would have had it. That was it.
Yeah, for sure. But other than that, we had Jack Doohan living up to his amazing performance this weekend again with a lovely 10-second penalty that he was slapped with for forcing another driver off the track. So Jack Doohan just out there, just not, caring whatsoever. He's just like, am I playing F1 24 again? Or am I, he was
per Hadjar, I think it was, right? He pushed him out, and then in the next corner, he was, braking a little bit late to block him off. And Hadjar was on the radio like, "What's this guy doing?" So for one of those two, he definitely deserved the 10 seconds. But I suppose then with the disqualifications, then after the race, this launched in a couple of drivers who were outside the top 10 into the points. So the likes of Carlos Sainz and Stroll and Behrman and Albon, they all kind of gained from that and got points inside the top 10. And we didn't really talk about Haas too much, but they had a great race.
Very good race.
5th and 8th in the end. Like Esteban Ocon looked like he was, Michael Schumacher going around there at times.
I'm sure Ocon was like, he was in there, not to even say he was in the midfield. He was at the top of the midfield. He was behind like the top of the pack there. And I'm sure he was probably racing there going, sweating buckets going, oh my God, I actually have to hold on to this now and actually get some points.
He was getting nosebleeds, I think,
Exactly.
But, Behrman had a great middle section of the race. I can't remember if it was just after he maybe changed tires or something, but
Mr. Chow.
He cut through quite a bit of the midfield. He had some great overtaking maneuvers, and I think he said each time was like Chow or something like that. Or
he is now henceforth being called Mr. Chow.
Mr. Chow, yeah. So he did quite well, and fair play to him. Yeah, it was good going for the rookie,
Yeah, and it's great to see that, like, that energy and that fighting spirit to go out there and, like, you know, obviously after Australia, he had a very, very tough weekend there, and then to go into this weekend, and obviously, yes, he was struggling, you know, with the car, but like to go into this race and perform the way he did and manage to bring home those amount of points, and obviously, yes, the disqualification that obviously contributed to the net gain that he got, but it's really good to see that fighting spirit coming from the likes of rookies, you know, because, you know, you see some rookies coming in and out of F1 and, you know, in their first season, you just don't see anything from them. Like, yes, okay, they might put in a nice lap time here or there and so forth and so on. But it's really good to see that energy and that fighting spirit. Like I was watching that race and I was going, these rookies are brilliant. You know, like this is the you know, when you look back at the class of 2025 rookies, I think these will definitely go down as probably one of the most exciting bunch of rookies that we've had so far, you know?
Yeah.
I could be wrong in saying that. There's been a lot in the past that have been exciting, but definitely this season has been good for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So there's two of them in the top 10 at the end. They scored points, and Hajar was 11, Lawson was 12. You know, so yeah. They did pretty well. But like McLaren, you know, they pulled it off on a 1-2, and you know, Oscar he's as cool as ice, right? He's a definite world champion in the making. You can see it, you know. He did his thing today, ran his race, and he was I don't think he really put a foot wrong, to be honest. The whole race, he was really good. Lando obviously had issues and he was struggling near the end and had a couple of things here and there, but yeah, he got P2, right? So, you know, front row lockout 1-2, and
that's it.
They got it, you know. And of course George got the podium too. That was a great one for Mercedes.
That was a good one for Mercedes. Definitely a masterclass from Piastri. Obviously, Norris, you know, bit difficult for him, but, you know, he brought it back in the end there. But just even mention there about Piastri, you know, a world champion in the making. To be honest, with the way it's looking, like, I know obviously in Australia he had his mistake, and, you know, I'm not saying we all make mistakes in the rain. Like we're not Formula One drivers, but you know, we can all understand that, you know, mistakes can be made in conditions like that. It happens to the best of the drivers. It happens to the worst of the drivers. And he bounced back from that. And, you know, he came into this race, you know, hungry to prove that he can bounce back and he can come back even better. And he proved that, you know, he did that. And on top of managing those tires and, you know, all of the conditions that they had to go through. And then even at one stage, there, like, a lot of the team radios were mentioning that there could be a possibility of rain, and I'm pretty sure that at the back of Piastri's mind, he was probably thinking, "Oh my God, not again!" You know. So it was good finally that there wasn't any rain at the very end, because at one stage I thought myself that there probably was going to be, but not enough to kind of make the call to go on to intermediates and, you know, start that whole kettle of fish off. But you know,
I think they were saying it was whatever way they categorize it, is like a 1 through a 4. It was like a 0.5. So at the very worst, it was going to be a light drizzle for half a lap or something. So I don't think it would have been too bad. But yeah, Oscar, he got back in. He was P9 last week, so he got back into it, and fair play to him for getting kind of shaking that off, and obviously getting the win then this week. You know. So who was your driver of the day?
So I was going to say that before we jump into our driver of the day and our lovely dick of the day, we'll take a look at the top 10 grid just to kind of round it off for China. So for the top 10, we had Piastri coming in there at P1, Norris P2, Russell P3. We had Verstappen coming in there at P4, Ocon P5. My God, something that you'd never probably thought you'd hear or say in 2025. Probably didn't have that on your bingo card. Antonelli coming in there at P6, Albon P7. We had Berman we had Berman in P8, Stroll in P9. I mean, who had that on their bingo card? Stroll actually getting points for the team, and fair play to him. You know, like the thing with Stroll is that, like, he has these sort of things throughout each season. Like, there's one time in each season where he actually performs really well, and then the rest of the season he ends up being an absolute doofus. And this was his one time. So, you know, from here, you're not going to see anything else from Lance Stroll. But anyway, he came P9 and he got some points for Aston Martin, which is great. And then finally, to round out the table, Carlos Sainz coming in there at P10, claiming that lovely point for Williams. So
Mr. Smooth Operator.
Mr. Smooth Operator. And I'm happy for him. I'm happy for him, you know, because I was a big Carlos Sainz fan when he was at Ferrari, and it's good. He had a very rough weekend. Both weekends it's been rough for him. It's been rough for a lot of people, but Carlos Sainz, it's good to see him getting some points there. And then, of course, just to finish it off, we had the DNF there from Alonso. Leclerc, Hamilton, and Gasly all got disqualified. We did talk about it there. But that is the result in why we had our top 10 there at the end of the race. So, driver of the day for myself, I have to give it to Ollie Behrman, 100%. Like, I know Piastri had a really good race, but, I have to give it to Ollie Behrman. As I said, really fighting spirit, loved his energy, loved his determination, loved the fact that he was just shouting chow to every driver. That's the energy, and that's the sort of thing you want to see from drivers. You want to see more of that. But yeah, Damien, who was your driver of the day?
Yeah, I'd have to go the same. Yeah, like I think he qualified near the back, like 17 or 18 or something like that, and he finished, 8th. So great middle section, as you said. Yep. Yeah, he kind of carved through there. He was kind of looking strong. So yeah, I think definitely Ollie Behrman. I think the official vote was to Antonelli, which I can kind of see why as well. He did quite well. I think he qualified 8th and he finished 8th, and then he got bumped up to P6 with the disqualifications of the Ferrari drivers. So yeah, that would have been a good shout too. But yeah, definitely I think Behrman for me as well. Yeah. Fair play to him. Won the Haas.
Yeah, exactly. It's good to finally see. Well, not say finally see. Like Haas had a good enough season last season as well. It was good to see their fighting spirit coming back again. But it's good to see Haas up there fighting with the top teams. Like whoever would have thought that you'd be hearing that in 2025? Again, something else you can cross off your bingo card. But then our dick of the day, Damien, look, I've already said this to our listeners. You're going to notice this, and you can probably just clip this little soundbite that I'm about to say and just paste it into each episode. My dick of the day is going to King Dick, Mr. Liam Lawson.
That's not very nice.
Hey, look, it's Formula One. You don't get anywhere from being nice. All right, so that's it. It's out there now in the internet. No going back from that. Liam Lawson is my dick of the day, just because he's Liam Lawson. But yeah, Damien, who is your dick of the day?
I don't think Liam Lawson deserved that, so I will pick Jack Doohan.
Jack Doohan. And why?
He forced Hadjar off the track, and then he was getting a little bit naughty, right, with the late braking and kind of blocking off Hadjar again. And I think he had a bit of a spin as well. Was he involved in the spin in the sprint race as well? So yeah, plus 10-second penalty he got for forcing off the track. So
and 3 penalty points. Yep.
Oh yeah, that as well. I forgot about that. Yeah, so you probably have to give it to him, right? If you're being impartial.
Yeah, no, definitely. But mine will always be Liam Lawson. So apologies, Liam, if you do listen to the show. Actually, no, not apologies. You're a dick. We joke. But yeah, so that was the Chinese Grand Prix. As I said, it was very exciting. A lot to unpack from that one. Really hoping to see more of that going into Japan. It's definitely going to be an exciting one. But before we do wrap things up here for today's episode, obviously we do need to do our predictions game. So we were talking to the guys. We were talking to Dave, Owen, and Isidro before we did this week's episode. And we did our predictions just to see exactly, who would come in the top 3, who would be their flop of the day, the surprise of the day, and overall who would result in being in the lead with our predictions. So we are back again for this season. We're going to be doing it all throughout 2025. And hopefully, when we have them on the show and stuff like that, they'll be able to add a little bit more sort of context into it as well, and we'll have some close battles between the lads. But anyway, so Dave, he had his top 3 was Piastri, Hamilton, and Norris. So Dave did get a point there because Piastri did come in P1, but unfortunately Hamilton and Norris, that was not the order. His flop of the day was just Hadjar. That was it. He just wrote down Isaac Hadjar. So I'm just going to give him a point for that because yes, he did finish outside the top 10, but I'm going to give it because it's funny anyway. So he did get 2 points overall for that. And then his surprise was Liam Lawson to finish inside the top 10. Dave, what were you thinking? It's Liam Lawson.
It was close. It was close. Well, yeah, not too far off.
Yeah, that's it. It was close. It was very close.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's 2 points there for Dave. Owen went for Piastri P1, Norris P2, and Verstappen P3. So we got 2 points out of that because we had Piastri and Norris came in P1 and P2. And then his flop of the day was going to be Albon outside the top 10. That didn't happen. He ended up inside the points. And then his surprise was that Hulkenberg was going to finish inside the top 10. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. But that resulted in Owen getting 2 points as well. Isidro, he sent in his predictions. He predicted that Norris was going to be P1, Max P2, and Piastri P3. 0 points there because unfortunately it ended up being Piastri, Norris, and Russell. And then his surprise was going to be Sainz inside the top 10, which he did get a point for, and his flop was Kimi Antonelli to DNF, and that ended up being in 0 points. So overall, Isidro has 1 point so far. Then for myself, I predicted that Piastri was going to come in P1, Russell in P2, and Verstappen in P3. I only got 1 point out of that. So
close.
It was close. It was very, very close. And then my flop was going to be Norris to finish outside the top 10 because, as I said earlier on in the episode, I just kind of felt that maybe just with his kind of, his energy that he was going into the race, I kind of thought that maybe he was going to end up outside the top 10, maybe have another mistake that he made it like in the sprint, but I got 0 points for that. And then my surprise was going to be Alonso inside the top 10. And you could probably, to my dismay after lap 5, I was like, well, there goes my point.
Yeah.
So, I ended up with 1 point out of that. And then finally, Damian, you were Piastri P1, Norris P2, and Hamilton in P3.
Oh, yeah. Close.
2 points out of that. And then your flop was going to be Russell to DNF. 0 points for that because he ended up finishing P3. And then finally, Sainz inside the top 10. You were
smooth operator.
So lucky. So lucky. I mean, if that disqualification hadn't happened, but obviously rules are rules. And it worked out in your favor. Have you got some magic Formula 1 8-ball that you have there that you just knew that was going to happen?
I'm going to say yes. Yeah, you do. 3 points overall. Nice. I'll take that.
It. So far in the lead, we have Damian with 3 points. Then we have Dave and Scotty with 2 points. Sounds weird calling him Scotty because he's also our brother as well. I'm just going to call him Owen. And then we have myself and Isidro with 1 point. So congratulations, Damian. You're off to a good start. With the predictions. But obviously we do have Japan in a week or two's time. So we do need to run through our predictions for Japan as well. So again, the guys did send in their predictions. So Dave went with Norris P1, Piastri P2, and Hamilton in P3. His flop is going to be Antonelli to DNF. And his surprise is Tsunoda inside the top 10. And you're going to notice that that's a recurring theme with kind of all of us playing it safe this for Japan. With Owen, he went with Norris P1, Piastri P2, and Russell P3. And his flop is predicting to be Behrman outside the top 10. And his surprise, again, Tsunoda inside the top 10 and Behrman outside the top 10. Isidro is going with Piastri, Max, and Hamilton for P1, P2, and P3. His flop is Hulkenberg to DNF and Tsunoda as the surprise. Again, I don't think it's a big surprise.
Hulkenberg to DNF, like that's Is that a flop? That's kind of like. I suppose he's called DNF, right? It's a DNF. We'll give him it, right?
Yeah. So who knows?
He called it.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But yeah, so, and then Tsunoda to finish inside the top 10. Then for myself, I'm predicting, I just kind of based on it off this weekend, I kind of feel China is its own sort of thing. There was a lot of tire dag there, but I think Suzuka is a different kettle of fish. I'm predicting Norris P1, Verstappen P2, and Hamilton P3. Again, my flop, and I'm sorry, Liam, but I'm going to have to do it. Lawson outside the top 10. And my surprise, and to everyone's surprise at this stage, it's not really a big surprise, Tsunoda inside the top 10. And then
Lawson outside the top 10, he finished 12th. Surely it has to be somebody that was inside the top 10 for a flop. We're expecting Lawson to be outside the top 10, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's a guaranteed point for me.
No, 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 no. I'm sorry,
No.
gonna have to pull you up on this one now.
What? No, I'm sorry. That's it. Lawson outside the top 10. I am playing my safe bingo card, okay? Lawson outside the top 10 is my flop. We're all expecting, or everyone's expecting, that he's going to come back and, he's going to finish and qualify inside the top 10. I'm saying it right now, outside the top 10.
No, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It has to be somebody who's in the top 10. Finished in the top 10 in the last race.
Right. I don't know.
There's an obvious one there, right?
Who do I go with then? Damn, I want to give it to Lawson so much. Don't quote me on that one. I'm gonna go. Do you know what? I'm gonna say Sainz DNFs. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna change that to Sainz to DNF. How about that?
Okay, yeah, that's doable.
Yeah, okay, cool. So we'll go with Sainz to DNF. That's my flop. And then my surprise is going to be Tsunoda inside the top 10. And then, Damien, do you want to run us through your predictions?
I've gone for P1 Norris, P2 Piastri, and P3 Russell. And my flop is going to be Stroll outside the top 10. That's a legit one because he finished, ninth or something. And Yuki is going to be my surprise inside the top 10. Hey. So I'm taking the Stroll guaranteed point there. Sorry, had to do it.
Kind of feels like you were playing the reverse Uno card on me, because we all know that Stroll is not a top 10 driver. Come on, Damien.
Well, he finished ninth. There are the rules, and I'm living by the rules.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, that's fair. Alrighty. So that's our predictions for Japan. We're really excited for Japan. I love Suzuka, one of my favorite tracks. It's definitely always an exciting track to watch any race at. So yeah, definitely going to be a good one. Very exciting one. So that is everything for China. We've gone through everything, the sprint race, the race itself. It's definitely been a good one. Really action-packed weekend, which is what a lot of Formula One fans were really looking forward to coming back into the start of the season. But before we do wrap things up for today, being an Irish podcast, we can't go anywhere without obviously saying a special mention to the very famous Eddie Jordan. Obviously, this week, Eddie Jordan passed away. I know the entire F1 community is, very, very upset and very sad to see that something like that happened. Eddie was a prominent figure in the Formula One community, and we all have very special memories of Eddie Jordan from time to time. Be it if you followed him throughout his career when he was on the wall on the grids, to listening to his podcasts and commentating on the paddock and stuff. But yeah, definitely a sad one with Eddie Jordan passing this week. Anything you want to say about that, Damien? Any special fond memories?
A big loss, I think. Maybe it was just before Christmas he announced that he hadn't been well. He was ill, so yeah, it was a bit of a shock to hear that. But absolute legend, and to hear the Irish national anthem 4 times at the end of an F1 race in the late 90s, early 2000s, that was always a great thing to see. And yeah, an absolute renegade and a maverick, and he just did everything he could do to get Jordan onto the grid and keep them on the grid. And his wheeling and dealing to keep that team going was nothing short of absolutely amazing. And obviously a fantastic character, a bit outspoken at times, but yeah, he was kind of life and soul of the paddock while he was around there. And yeah, obviously later on in his media career, he was always a great one to listen to, always up for a bit of a laugh. I think he did a podcast, I think, or something with David Coulthard for a long time there, and that was always a great listen. So yeah, big loss, and rest in peace, Eddie Jordan.
Yes, definitely rest in peace. And in the words of Eddie Jordan, if you don't believe, you're fucked. But I personally believe that we're going to have a great season this season. It's going to be an action-packed one. We're really excited to be here. And I hope everyone listening today, you really did enjoy today's episode. Of course, look, let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments or wherever you're listening to this. And, give us a follow over on Instagram and all of our socials and all of that kind of good stuff. But yeah, definitely rest in peace, Eddie. You'll definitely be missed. But until next time, Damian, thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. Again, look, we'll definitely have Isidro, or hopefully we'll have Isidro back for Japan. But Damian, thank you so much for taking the time out of your sunny Sunday afternoon over there in the United States.
Absolutely no problem at all. Glad to chat about the race today and last week, and yeah, looking forward to a good season.
Awesome, cool. Alrighty, folks, enjoy the rest of your Monday afternoon, because this is our Monday evening, or whatever time you're listening to this on a Monday. And yeah, we'll see you all in Japan. So take it easy, folks. Adios.